Welcome, Wake Forest families. You are here with us today for Just for Parents and Families Part 2, Help with the College Transition. I am Dr. Betsy Chapman. I'm the Executive Director of Family Communications and a two-time Wake Forest graduate myself. So I have lived in the same residence halls that some of your incoming students are going to live in. I have done the same basic and divisional requirements and worried about registration and all of those fun things. And in addition, I am the mother to a rising high school junior. So this college thing is becoming more and more real every day. And joining me today, I will let himself introduce Dr. James Raper.
Hi, friends. My name is James. I am currently the Assistant Vice President for Health and Wellbeing here at Wake Forest. I've done that for the last few years. Previous to that, for the last 17 years, I worked in the University Counseling Center, so I'm a licensed mental health provider. Part of what you'll hear if you watched the first part one of our video series, you heard me share a little bit of sort of from the therapist's chair, what I heard from students over the years. You'll hear a little bit more about that. If you haven't seen part one yet, Betsy and I both strongly encourage you to go back. It's basically like the conversations you can have during the summer to help prepare the whole family for the college experience. But don't worry, you can continue to have them hopefully throughout the rest of the college experience as well. So this presentation is going to focus on how to help manage their transition to college. We first want to emphasize that we really have a shared desire. Both Betsy and myself, the rest of the support staff and senior administrators of the university, faculty, that we share the same desire that you do as a family and particularly as parents. And that's to produce well-adjusted, healthy adults who are prepared to face life's challenges. We want to make sure things are as clear as possible for you and your students in the best ways that you can support them and the way the university can support all of us, all of you all in the coming years as Wake Forest students.
So as we think about the start of your student's college career, you may be feeling and they may be feeling a lot of different emotions. That could be excitement, anxiety. You may have questions. They may feel unsettled. And all of those things are normal. And what we want to do today is just share some of the insights that we have. We've worked with college students for a really long time. This is what we do for a living, and we love working with college students to help you know what to expect and how best to support your sons and daughters during their years with us at Wake Forest.
So a brief overview, we'll talk about transitions, the challenges sometimes that come with life transitions, and certainly going to college certainly counts. It's on the list of significant life change and the opportunities that are embedded in this kind of transition. Some tips on how to support your child. The redefining of roles that is pretty much inherent in emerging adults going off to college and how those relationships with parents and families can change. And then making sure you're aware of the vast array of university resources that are available to both the students and certainly parents and families. So really normal to experience some anxiety as parents as we leave our students on campus and go back home and leave them in our hands as a university. There are frequently questions that you might have of, have I done enough? Have I prepared them enough? And this is, if you allow me to put on my therapist hat for a moment, this is really normal because what's being highlighted is our sense of control. That when we depart from the university, we've dropped them off, we move them into their residence halls, we've met the roommates, that we're really realizing that this is now up to them for the most part. And that can be really scary. The good news is that we have all done this before as parents. I also have a rising junior in high school. like Betsy, and I'm already terrified about college and it's years away, and I do this as my job. But it's because I want to make sure that my son is taken care of wherever he goes, and so I have to remind myself in the same way I'm reminding everyone here. We've all done this before. If you remember what it was like to drop off at preschool or daycare or kindergarten the first time, and they're walking into their room and their backpack's way too big for them, and wondering if they're going to be okay. Is the teacher going to be nice? Are they going to find friends? That's kind of the similar anxiety that I've heard parents say the same. Are the teachers going to be nice, and are they going to find friends when they're 18 and being dropped off at Wake? And think of the other developmental milestones as children and as adolescents that you've experienced with them the first time they drive away with their driver's license, dropping them off for a first date or a group outing. Those are really normal experiences that we've gone through as parents in managing our own anxiety. And this is just the next one. So good news, you've done this before. I'd strongly also encourage parents to consider reflecting on what you have done, the investments that you have made in developing this amazing human being whom you're dropping off at Wake Forest. You worked so hard, and you will never get enough gratitude from your kids about it. So don't hold your breath on that one. But you and I and Betsy all know all the things you've done, those little micro moments, and some of the macro moments where you have had a tremendous influence on creating the humans that you created. So take a moment to reflect on that, to cry, to celebrate, to look through old pictures and own the amazing job you have done to get to this place. Notice the challenges that you experienced. Think about the bumps and the swerves. You weren't quite sure if you were going to get here. Were you waiting on your child to say, I think I'm not going to go to college? And how are we going to have that conversation? And yet you've made it here, and it's to clearly an excellent university that is going to stimulate your children in and out of the classroom in ways that are truly outstanding. So congratulations, you've made it.
If we were doing this in Waite Chapel, there'd be a big sigh of relief and a shared kind of collective wow from everybody. So
yeah, Betsy, actually everyone should know we normally do this in Waite Chapel.
That's true.
So we normally have somewhere between 600 to 800 parents, and there's also a lot of sniffling going on. People are just boo-hooing, as they should, as they're releasing those emotions and reflecting on what an important time this is. Sorry to interrupt.
It's true, and I'm an easy crier, so if one of you starts, then I do too. So perhaps virtual is better for right now. So today we want to talk a little bit about 4 R's that will play a role in how your students experience college and also how your family experiences this transition. So we're going to talk about the first 3 being responsibilities, relationships, and resilience. These are areas that are key developmental areas for your students, and this is where they'll experience growth and change. The last one about redefining roles is more about sort of how your family shifts once your students make it to campus and college begins. So we'll start with responsibilities. So when your students were in high school, you might have imagined them spinning all of these plates in the air. Metaphorically, they had grades, maybe they were a student athlete, or maybe they were in the marching band, maybe they had a service project or a faith practice that they were very committed to, lots of extracurriculars. And oh, by the way, they were also trying to get into college at the same time. So they had all of these things going on. And it may feel a little disarming to you that they're about to have all of these new plates to spin in the air. That's not just the ones they're used to. So they've got to figure out how to be a college student. That's everything from how much sleep do I need and where do I study the best? How can I make sure I'm eating well, eating right? I certainly ate a lot of pizza in the first few months at Wake, I will say. but they will be making 100% of their decisions about how to take care of all of the things that you see on this screen. And a lot of that is going to be trial and error for them. So they have to learn how to be responsible. Sometimes they're going to make everything, make all their decisions, and it's going to be just right. There will be other times where they maybe make a misstep, and they're going to learn something from that. And as a mom myself, the hardest times for me are when I know my son's about to do something wrong and I have to just bite my tongue and see what happens, because that's how he's going to learn from it. So we encourage you to try to let them find their responsibility for how to accomplish all of these things, without intervening to the degree that you can. It's playing the long game here. The more you can help them foster their own independence early, the more confident they're going to be as a college student, and the better off they'll be in terms of self-sufficiency. But do not worry, they will always need you. So a few tips, and if you watched the first video, you would have heard us talk about this at length, is it's helpful for parents and families to transition out of being sort of in a more managerial or directing role to more of a consultant role. So you want to listen and provide emotional support, but you don't want to provide the answers. This is a time for your students to find those answers. You can prompt them with some reflective questions, some, how do you think you might handle that? And really listen to where they're coming from. But having said that, there are some places where it's really important for you to help provide a more broad sense of guidance and framework about what's sort of truly healthy and normal. Sleep is a great issue. So imagine that your DEEC calls you in a couple weeks and they're consistently talking about being tired or being up until 1 a.m. studying and so forth. You can, in this sort of consultant role, say something like, gosh, honey, you sound tired a lot of the times that I'm talking to you, and you consistently talk about, being up at 1 a.m. and you're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep at night. And it may seem pretty normal if a lot of your friends and hallmates are doing that, but that may not really be healthy. Have you thought about some ways that you could get some more sleep? And so the important kind of part here is that you're not telling your student what to do. In order to get more sleep, you should set your alarm, at 11 o'clock, and that's when you have to put your books away and turn off the TV. And, you're not making it happen for them, but you're just providing some prompting on how they can, find their own solutions, but also if something doesn't seem like it's healthy and normal based on how they're responding to you, you can normalize what that behavior really is for them.
So this is a good time to highlight the issue of alcohol and other substances that students across the nation will be experiencing on college campuses. So you're going to hear this here. You're going to hear some more detailed information in other orientation venues, online modules. The first 6 weeks are pretty critical in the life of first-year students. And so we want to make sure, as we're talking to parents and families, to reassure, to emphasize for you all that you can really help set the tone for what the experience that your student has in their first year. So have those, as we talked about in part one, have those hard conversations. If you haven't yet gotten around to doing it, please have those hard conversations with your child. And by that, that means talking about your experiences with alcohol and other drugs. They are now likely going to be at least 18 years old. The very, very, 99% of our incoming class are at least 18. So they're going out into the world. And if there is information about your family history, about your own experiences and learning moments, mistakes that you feel like they might benefit from, now is the time. It's not the only time, but it's certainly an excellent time. What that does is it will help empower them to make choices that are right for them, and to be consistent with the values that you and your family hold. And that's a nice way, I think, to frame it, is is reminding them of the values they've grown up with and that you've taught them. They're going to try new things. That's actually the point of being at this part of life, is to stretch a little bit, to either affirm what their current values are or to begin exploring and expanding. But remembering them, they kind of have like a true north in you and your family's values that they can come back to. So listening to themselves, absent those conversations, can really feel like a big risk, because part of the developmental journey of college students is really an extension of what began often in middle school and high school, is a focus on peer acceptance. And so what you're helping to do is balance out that drive for peer acceptance with a sense of listening to that voice inside that says, this feels comfortable to me, this does not. Talk to them about what potential consequences are of alcohol and other drug use and abuse, what those are. Again, they're going to get a lot of this information throughout their experience at Wake Forest, certainly during orientation. But it doesn't hurt. It certainly can help to hear that from you all as well. And emphasizing things like their impact on their health, their sleep, as Betsy was just talking about, how they use their time, what their impact is on mood, and certainly their ability to keep themselves safe. Please emphasize to them that there are a tremendous amount of social opportunities that do not involve alcohol. And at every university, this is not unique to Wake, the belief is that to be accepted and to have fun, it must involve alcohol, and it only involves alcohol. And that's just simply not the case. Current students know that it's not the case, but we try to get that message out as early as possible, so that folks really understand that they can make choices that are right for them and still have fun and still feel engaged and connected to their peers. And then if you happen to have a student who does identify as being in recovery from alcohol or other drug use and abuse, we already have an existing campus recovery community, and they're supported by staff that are in the Office of Wellbeing, and they actually have their own physical space that's allocated just for those members. That is in the Wellbeing Center, and it's really lovely. They do regular outings throughout the week, and it's a community that stays pretty tight throughout their time at Wake Forest. So the next R is relationships. And if we think about first their peers, there's the peers from high school, their high school friends, their new Wake Forest friends that they're developing relationships with, their roommates. Sometimes those are close friends, sometimes they are simply roommates, and both of those things are totally okay. Starting with high school friends, it's really difficult to leave friends at home. And there's a pervasive question that predates the social media, has continued through the existence of social media, is will we still feel connected? Will I still feel connected with my friends from high school? And I think what social media highlights is, while I can still stay connected to them in many ways, because I'm going to see them on Snapchat, I'm going to see them on Instagram, and we can FaceTime and any other app that I'm too old to know of at this point. That also can have this flip side of being actually threatened, because I see now more of these friends from high school who they're kind of like cheating on me with other new friends at their high school, at their college or university. And so it's a little bit of a mixed bag. And if I'm at a place as a first year student who maybe I'm not in my first day or my first week feeling super connected yet, that can be really jarring and can add to my anxiety about the stability of my relationships. So you want to be aware of that as a parent and a family member. You want to recognize and validate for them that this transition is simply just hard. Even great transitions are hard and anxiety provoking. And I'll give you all a preview of upcoming attractions for Thanksgiving break and for the winter break. They're going to want to spend time with their friends from home. They're likely not going to want to spend as much time with you, and I promise you that's actually that is a good thing. That means they have, again, to use a therapist term, they have healthy attachments with you, and they're going out to spend time with their friends because they want to reassure themselves of the bonds that they had built through high school, that they're still there. Wake Forest attracts students from all over the country and absolutely all over the globe. And what that means is, again, I think one of the excellent parts about going to engaging in higher education is you get exposed to difference of thought, difference of values, difference of music and clothes and look and smell and sounds, and that's really amazing. And that's still going to be an adjustment for many of our students. And so they might have reactions to whether it's their roommate or hallmate or someone in their class or someone in their club who is simply presenting as different in whatever way that is manifesting. And so I want to invite parents and families to be ready for that and to hear it through that, potentially through that filter of just a child, a student being exposed to difference and the growth that can come from that. But you're going to help them reframe a little bit. Faculty and professors are another example of the kind of relationships that are going to be, they may have some really close faculty members they had in high school. And certainly I know that many students and families choose Wake Forest because we have a professoriate that comes to Wake Forest to teach. They are not simply here to quote unquote research. They are here to be in front of students and engage in instruction. And they want those close relationships with their students. I cannot tell you all how many times, and I'm telling you, it's probably thousands, no joke. The amount of times I've talked to someone when I was working in the counseling center, they were coming in with an academic concern or something related to a class or generally their approach to academics. And I said, well, have you talked to your professor yet? Or have you talked to all your faculty yet? Have you met them in person? Have you stayed after class? Have you gone to office hours? And the first time I asked that question, let's say I said it 3,000 times, 2,900 times, they had not had that conversation. So, and I bet you 2,500, once they did it, it addressed the issue that they were concerned about. So engaging with your faculty is critical. They want to know about you. They want to help you grow as students, and particularly in their area of focus. So please reinforce that message as you're talking with your students when they're having, whether it's questions or concerns or anxiety about developing a relationship with your faculty. So then we have family. Notice who's last on this list. It's y'all. And it might feel like you're now always going to be last in the list. And again, I'll remind you, that's actually a good thing because they feel the most comfortable with you. But it can hurt our pride a little bit. It can hurt our heart a little bit. But I promise they're going to circle right back around to you when they need to. So it's okay to stay in touch with them. It's okay to ask for regular check-ins. This is going to be a negotiation, this early part of the college experience that you can have right now of how often are we going to stay in contact with one another. For some parents and families and kids, it's not a big deal. It's going to happen naturally. For others, you might want to have a concrete conversation about it to be really clear. And lastly, and invite y'all to keep them in the loop about what's going on at home. They worry about you. I think one of the things that surprises parents the most is when I share with them that students worry about them. They are aware and sensitive to, for many families, the financial component that the families are supporting their students in attending Wake Forest. They're aware of the emotional component of, let's say, having an empty nest or whatever else is going on. If you have other children or dependents at home that you're taking care of, they really, as much as it may seem like they're in their own world, they really are aware of that stuff. They may not know how to share that with you, but at this point, but it is something they carry around with them. So keep them in the loop. They really want to please you. They want to make you proud. And through no fault of parents and families, they feel pressure to succeed and make this worth everyone's investment. And so I will say The best antidote to all those things is regular expressions of your unconditional love for them, period. Nothing else. I mean, you can do other things, but that is the most important thing above and beyond everything else, probably in some. And a good other tip is at times when you see them throughout this first semester, and I would say for the rest of our lives too, but let's just say for now, don't talk about their weight, don't talk about their appearance in general. Unless you are significantly concerned, and there's a slide later where we'll talk about when to be concerned. Weight change is pretty significant, is pretty common, in the first semester or so, sometimes the first year. Sometimes appearance changes, you know, the whole sort of purple hair. I ended up getting 2 earrings at some point and I kept them for quite a while. It just happens. And this is the part of exploring myself and detaching from parents and families and that kind of stuff. It'll all be okay. I turned out okay. I don't know if Betsy turned out okay or not. I'll let her tell you if she did or not. But
I'm just going to say, I want to echo 1,000%, just not commenting on their appearance, whether that's weight or you think they have shaggy hair or they haven't, you know, they have different facial hair. As an academic advisor, sometimes my advisees will tell me, you know, oh, I know my mom's going to get on me about this or my dad's going to get on me about that. And you can spare them the pain that you did not have any intention of causing by not going there.
Thanks, Beth. So to summarize some tips, what I like to say is that college student development, and I'm sorry for those who have exposure to the college student developmental theory. Anybody who has a master's or a PhD in that, I know Betsy does, I apologize. But I'm condensing all of the literature into college student development is what's going on in here, basically inside my brain, inside this sort of 1 cubic foot of space. And then what's going on out there? What's going on in the world? What's going on in my relationships? That is and where do I fit in all that? That is the next 4 to 40 years of your student's life. Encourage your child to pursue opportunities that involve their interests, to connect with new people, and then to also encourage them to try new things. Help them to understand that feeling excitement, homesickness, feeling connected and disconnected all at the same time. It's really normal. I promise at some point, well, maybe not promise, it is not uncommon for at some point in the fall semester, you're gonna hear, I think I made the wrong choice. I don't think Wake's the place for me. Everyone else seems super happy. They all have tons of friends. Their social schedules are packed. Their classes are perfect. And I still feel like I'm failing at everything. And again, that can be true for on one hand, you count that for some students, but in my experience, I've been here for 20 years. That ruffle is just a ruffle, and then it smooths out as they realize, one, they're not the only ones struggling. And because part of that reaction is really that I'm alone. That's probably what you're hearing, is they feel alone in I'm not doing it all right. And two, that they do figure it out. It just doesn't take a week. And sometimes they really feel like this should be a perfect place. I land here and everything is smooth sailing. And we all know now that we've all lived lives that that's not the way life is. But that can be hard for emerging adults. And then again, we'll use that word consultant. Be a consultant around their problems as they navigate and figuring out their own solutions to the things that life throws at them.
And James set this up really beautifully, just in terms of thinking about resilience. Resilience is one of the most critical skills that your students can develop. And that's, how do we face the normal challenges and setbacks and disappointments, problems that come our way. And I would posit to you that resilience also has a place for parents and families. We have to be resilient when we hear our students say, I'm not sure I made the right choice, or everybody has friends, or I don't. I find myself as a mother, one of my hardest struggles is managing my own emotions when I know my student is upset or disappointed. So there's two kind of resilience things happening right here. There's one, how is your student developing their own skills? And two, how are we developing our skills as parents, our sort of pain tolerance for the normal bumps in the road that our kids might have as college students. So one of the beauties about resilience is you can improve your resilience as you practice other things that are simple, good everyday things to do, getting a little movement, thinking positively, keeping a gratitude journal. We have a wonderful mindful wake community that helps teach mindfulness, and they use a course that was developed specifically for college students based on where sort of their brains are. So there's lots of tools in the toolbox to help with resilience for students, but we also have some roadblocks. So thinking about roadblocks to resilience, and these are very common, not just for college students, it's fear of failure. You know, I'm afraid to try something because I'm afraid that I'll fail. So sometimes that keeps students from trying something new and learning some growth in a new thing. That comfort zone can be really protective. And sometimes as parents, we can nudge in that consultant role by asking a sort of rhetorical or hypothetical question. You know, what have you done to sort of push yourself? Have you tried anything that's really been a challenge? And they don't have to answer that, but it can be a prompt that it's okay and good for students to try. We're not going to get everything perfect every single time. James alluded to sort of social media before. There's a real pervasive fear for students that I might not appear perfect. If I try something and I don't do well, is the whole world going to see it? And if I'm imagining that all of my other friends on social media at other schools who have these beautifully curated pictures of all their friends and all the tailgates they're going to and all the football games or whatever, if I don't seem like I measure up to that, that can really be painful. A lot of our students also, frankly, just have a lack of experience with setbacks. You've raised amazing kids. They got into a top university, and they might not have had some of the struggles in high school or earlier. And also sometimes we as parents and family members have well-intended rescuing. We want to try to help our students, you know, ease those bumps in the road. But again, if you can become comfortable with the idea that your students will have bumps, and it doesn't mean they're a disaster at college or Wake is the wrong place for them, but this is part of the normal growth process, the happier sort of you and they will be. So we'll offer you a few tips. So have in the back of your mind some examples of times that they've struggled before and persevered. So when they call you and talk about, you know, everything is terrible or whatnot, you can remind them that they've had bumps before, in the same way that James, you know, reminded us at the beginning of this presentation. You know, we've dropped our kids off at school once before. This is just a different level of school. So have some of those examples. But it's also really important to share your own stories. Most of our children will never tell us just how much they love and respect us until they get a lot older and their brains are very much fully developed. But generally speaking, when I talk to students and they tell me about their parents and their loved ones, they kind of think you're perfect and you've always done everything right and you've never struggled. So to understand that you have had struggles too and you've overcome them will help them go like, oh, maybe it's okay that things, you know, are a little rough for me right now. My mom or my dad or my grandma or my auntie or whoever did this too, and look, they turned out okay. James referenced earlier the importance of, you know, sharing your unconditional love, and I would stress that, you know, every time you can, you know, express that you love them no matter what, and that you have trust and confidence in them that, you know, they're gonna do a great job in college, and, you know, they'll find their own way. So again, just normalize that there will be some bumps in the road, and on the next slide we've got a few examples of those. So I can tell you in the same way of, you know, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of students over the course of my life at Wake, and almost all of them come into my office at some point early on in their in their time at Wake, and they are convinced that everybody else has it figured out, and they're the only one who doesn't. And sometimes it's just helpful as a parent or family member to say, honey, I know you sound really stressed. I'm so sorry for that. I trust you. I know things are going to fall into place, and start asking some of those questions about, are there folks on campus that maybe you could talk to? Are there resources out there? What has your RA said? So those are gentle ways of sort of helping them think about thinking about who they might be able to connect with, that could also help reassure them that these bumps in the road are normal. A lot of these anxieties that you see on the screen are sort of the convergence of people wanting to appear perfect in social media, people expressing great confidence when they're talking to others, but they may not actually, kind of feel that inside. So one bit of advice that I always give my students that come to see me is practice really radical vulnerability. If you're feeling homesick, or if you got a test score that was lower than you thought, or if you're feeling like you still haven't learned how to get around on campus, own that, and be willing to say that to other people. And other students who are also just as scared and nervous in these first few weeks are going to respond to that very often in quite positive ways, like, oh, thank goodness, I thought I was the only one. And again, it's having that sense of knowing that you're not the only one in those situations that really can make the difference. One of the biggest issues is friends. How do we develop friendships? And making friends takes time and effort. And this kind of blows your students' minds, and at every school, not just at Wake. You think about, I've got 1,400 new classmates here and another 3,000 to 4,000 that are going to arrive in a few days. Why don't I have anybody to eat lunch with or eat breakfast with? How can I feel lonely when I'm surrounded by more people than I had at my high school, and all the other activities I've ever done? And this really happens every year. Students are surprised that they feel lonely. So if they call you or text you or share that they feel lonely, here are some tips on the screen to help them think about what they can do to make those connections. And this requires putting yourself out there. And it's harder for people like me who are an introvert to, knock on people's doors and introduce yourself and say hello. But everyone in the new student class is in the same boat. The more you put yourself out there and the more you try to connect, the more you say hello, look people in the eye, smile, don't just sit there on your phone as you're walking from point A to point B. Those are moments where you can really start to connect with your classmates. So that's a great opportunity to help normalize that they need to take a bit of an active role here, which might feel uncomfortable, but there's going to be a payoff for that. So another thing to just think about as we come to the final R is this issue of redefining roles. How do you and your student and the rest of your family, siblings, grandparents, or whomever, think about how to be now that they're in college? And again, this is where, for somebody like me as the mother of an only child, hard to pull back and just let my student be in the driver's seat. But your student is the one that should be doing most of the active work. They're the ones picking their classes, picking their friends, figuring out which organizations to get involved with. And you're really there in those touch moments where they want to and need to have a little bit of reassurance. So you are a great sounding board. You're going to listen more than perhaps you have in the past, and really kind of get to know how they sound, and prompt them with questions and ways that they can start thinking about their decisions that need to be made. But of course, we don't want to help unless it's really and truly needed. Some of you, I should have mentioned this earlier, some of you know that I write a blog called The Daily Deke. And one of the things I talk about frequently is this notion of stop, drop, and roll. And this is really about whenever your student has called you with a situation they're upset about, or a problem, or something that needs to be done. And again, this is where, as a parent, it's important to try to manage your own reaction to your student's reaction, if you will. And stop, drop, and roll is really about, like, when your student calls to vent to you, stop whatever you're doing that might either be to say, like, oh gosh, I've got to help this or fix this, or provide the answer. Drop back into sort of a directing mode and be more of that consultant, where you're thinking about, gosh, honey, that sounds tough. What do you think you might do? And then roll with whatever their solution is. I can promise you, because I've seen this happen so many times, you will get at some point a frantic phone call where they will call you and say, or a text and say, everything is just terrible. I hate my chemistry professor, and my roommate's awful, and blah, 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 blah. And as a parent or loved one, it's very hard to sort of hear that, especially because you're thinking about, why am I paying tuition and all these things and sending my student several states away, or whatever, for them to feel, frustration, or to have a bad time. It's incredibly hard in those moments to take a step back and take a bunch of deep breaths and just listen and be sympathetic. But I can promise you, in almost every case that I've ever talked to a parent or family member in this situation, if you leave it alone for 24 to 48 hours and then check in with your student a couple days later and say, gosh, last time I talked to you, you were really upset with your roommate, Robbie, and chem wasn't going so well. How is it? Almost invariably, your student will go, oh, that was that it's all fine. Because what happens is they're venting to you. You're their safe place. They vent to you and they dump off all of the anxiety and problematic feelings, and then they're like off having pizza with friends or something like that. It really is sometimes as simple as that. Although as loved ones, it's hard and it doesn't feel that way. But James and I promise you, this is really what happens.
Absolutely. So far, as we begin to close out this presentation, so far what you've heard is kind of representative of the amount of when you have situations come up, how many of them are be a consultant, how many of them are manage your own reactions and facilitate your students seeking their own solutions. And then we're going to focus the few amount of times, but they're important enough that we want to make sure we pay attention to them. But when you should be concerned and when you should be a little bit more engaged and assertive with your student and with the university. So it's important to recognize that emotions and the behaviors associated with emotions exist on a spectrum. I think we all kind of know that intuitively. But if you think about anxiety as existing on a spectrum, for example, I felt a little nervous preparing for this presentation. That's my body saying, and there's a variety of symptoms I might have, right? My heart rate might increase a little bit. I might get a little sweatier. My brain might start moving a little bit quicker as I'm thinking about, do I have the notes, and do I have enough water in case I start coughing or whatever. That's like way on one end of the spectrum, very low level, actually helps me get prepared and hopefully perform a little bit better. That anxiety can really help us in that way. And then we start moving down the spectrum, and it can be anxiety about, let's say for a first year student, developing good social relationships and going out with a new group of friends. And so there might be some extra focus on what I'm wearing, and maybe they're more silent or they're more talkative when they're in the group. And that's pushed through anxiety. And then you think about anxiety about, let's say, academic performance, and they are studying sometimes too much, and they're kind of perseverating on how much they're studying. Or sometimes anxiety gets so much academically that they end up avoiding classes because of fear of failure. And it's when those, whether it's anxiety or depression and a few other things we'll talk about in a moment, it's when those things start getting in the way of living one's life consistently that we encourage parents and families and just any loved one, peers. We have a variety of professional and paraprofessional staff at Wake Forest who are trained to do the same kind of thing. And that's when you begin to have more direct conversations with your student about what your concerns are. This would be an example of when you do want to talk about appearance. If appearance is beginning to look like they haven't taken a shower in quite a while, in part because maybe they're avoiding certain things, or because often when this does happen, often the cases they're feeling or significantly depressed. And so generally hygiene and eating can take a back burner. That's when you do want to share and say, I'm concerned about the way you're looking. I'm concerned about the way I'm hearing you talk. Tell me a little bit more about what's going on. So that is certainly it's certainly a fine time to have those direct conversations. In general, I would say still don't talk about weight gain, because weight gain is going to be a symptom. It's not going to be really the issue that is of concern. So if there are eating behaviors you're concerned about, for example, if you someone's roommate or a friend, or let's say a high school friend contacts you as a parent or family member and says, I hear that James has begun, they talked about maybe they were starting to throw up after they eat meals. That would be something where that's not about weight gain, but it is an eating behavior that you do want to make sure you name directly. And we can certainly, if you were concerned about that, this is a great time to call the counseling center. And the counseling center staff are staffed with all licensed mental health providers, and they're not just available to students as clients. They're available to parents and families as consultants themselves to help you talk through what would be the appropriate next step, because there's a lot of individual context, as you might imagine, about what kind of conversation to have, when to have it, that sort of thing. So this is where you want to engage the university and all of its resources, which we'll name in a few slides. Things like addiction, whether it's chemical addiction or process addiction, where there are behaviors getting in the way that students can't find themselves having a hard time stopping. A one you might hear of is like a gambling addiction, where there's, let's say, online poker, for example, where they're staying up late, they're not going to class because they're really focused on that kind of next hand that they want to play. That would be a general example of a process addiction. And other things about where there is an unhealthy relationship that they're having with a peer that feels like it's taking up way too much of their time and getting in the way of them living a more balanced life, or other kinds of traumatic life events that can either happen on campus or in their personal lives off campus, or at home, or in their kind of hometown relationships, that you want to make sure, if you are concerned, that you have some direct conversations with them about. Again, if you do have concerns and you feel like I'm not quite sure what the next step is, this is when you give us a call. Counseling Center, Student Health Service, the Office of the Dean of Students, those are all great places to start, and you'll get directed to kind of funnel to the right professional as needed. And to that end, what a great segue, James. To that end, we have Betsy's favorite and my favorite, Mr. Rogers. I hope all of us who are watching this are probably old enough to remember Mr. Rogers. I'm going to be very sad one day where I'm giving this presentation and someone doesn't remember Mr. Rogers. But this is one of our favorite shared quotes. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping. At Wake, you really can't walk 5 feet without finding a helper. And that could be someone who is emptying the trash in Benson Center, or someone who is serving you pancakes, or a residence life professional staff member, or a peer, or a faculty member, or Betsy Chapman. So we have a variety of folks who are here to be a good support net, a safety net for our students, and who can be great consultants to you as well.
James, if I may, one of the struggles sometimes that students have, and I was this kid at Wake, I was afraid to ask people for help because I didn't want anyone to think I was stupid or I wasn't competent or whatever. So remember the Mr. Rogers moment if it happens, and help your students understand that it's okay and it's smart to ask for help. You know, suffering on your own never helps, but we will treat your students as young adults. We'll honor their privacy. So it's a little different from high school, where people don't, stop you and say, Betsy, you seem distracted in class today. Is everything okay? But urge them to, give a little signal or a sign when they need something. Because as James said, you cannot walk 5 feet on the quad without tripping over 5 people that would help you.
Yeah. And a good example too of where, if you have personal experiences asking for help in your life, as a parent or a family member, this is where you share them. That will help normalize that life is not about kind of sailing through things perfectly. It's about when you trip, not if you trip. When you trip, what you do to allow others to help you stand up and move forward. As promised, this is just a sort of top level, and we couldn't fit it all on one slide, as you might imagine. The top level of support service offices, everything from the Dean of Students to the LGBTQ plus Center, to our international students and scholars, and a variety of quote unquote centers, the Writing Center, Math Center, Chem Center, et cetera. And then certainly Betsy's Office of Family Engagement that she worked closely with.
So if you want or need to get in touch with us, as James said, one of the quick ways to do it is you can go to the parents.wfu.edu website. We have a who to contact for button there that will help connect you with the right office. Always in that stop, drop, and roll vein, I would say, if your student needs to get something done, you can show them that link and charge them with doing the research and getting in touch. But we're here to help you in any way we can. And we, again, share the same success wishes for your student. We want them to thrive. You want them to thrive. And there's tons of us, James and me and many others, who are here to try to help make that happen for your students.
Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Wake Forest family.
That's right. Go Deeks.